Okay, we're going to get going with weekly review here. For our first segment, Reviewers Speak Out. My good friend Kim Stoker is joining me this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Oh, great. And many reasons. And one of the reasons is that we are talking about this interesting new show with interesting name. What's Poppin?
Yeah, that is an interesting name. And it's also interesting that the host is the same.
Right.
The show is different. The title is different.
Right.
The focus is different.
Right. So only the host remains in place, but whole new show. So because this show's title is What's Poppin', I have to ask you, how is Poppin'?
It is poppin'
Didn't
for
work
sure.
that well.
Okay. It's definitely poppin'. You know, its focus is on pop. Its focus is on, I guess I would say, Western pop, American and Brit pop.
Right. Okay. And the overall observation, I mean, since you mentioned, Drive-In was the previous show, and it was completely different kind of show. So, I don't know. I was thinking about comparing between the two shows, but I don't know. That's not exactly... How would you want to take it? A lot of people are just wondering, our listeners who are listening in right now, interesting show with interesting name. Maybe I should listen to it, but why? Why should I listen to it?
Well, I wanted to mention something about the previous show. And the reason that I wanted to talk about that was to give some context for the show now.
Okay.
And so...
Because it means a lot about the host.
Definitely.
Okay.
And so I wanted to really focus on the host, which is, the host is Brian Ju, which people probably know.
Such a famous name with fandom from all around the world, indeed.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me.
So when he first came to EFM, he was hosting a show called The Drive-In. And the focus of The Drive-In was looking at movies and films and music and TV shows.
Right.
And so I think that show had a lot of potential. I'm not sure it reached its potential, but...
It didn't have enough time.
Maybe. It was an hour show. Yeah. But I think it's very clear that with What's Poppin', it suits Brian better.
Okay.
Brian is much more comfortable with the content. He's much more familiar with the music overall, and I think that makes it much stronger.
Right. I mean, Brian himself, he's a singer. He's not a entertainment industry reporter. So he has not been a movie critique before. So having this 1 hour movie and drama focused show itself must have been tough. And what I was saying, he needed more time is not only is it just the length of the show itself, 1 hour, but also sometimes we need over a year to develop a program into a really cruising at its proper altitude, and didn't have much time. But you're now saying that switch itself was a smart idea, actually, switching to this program that seems to be working better with him.
I think it works better for the host.
Okay.
I think it would be, there's still potential, I think, to have some sort of music-based, soundtrack-based, music for films-based sort of show, but I think Brian would not be the best host for that type of show. So What's Poppin' suits him well.
Okay.
And because we know that Brian has a very strong fan base, it's very clear. And I think people like to listen to Brian's stories. He has kind of stories for different songs, and I think that's nice. And it makes him seem very personable.
Right.
And I would guess fans are very attracted to that.
Right. So he really has found a proper place to shine, indeed.
I think so.
Yeah.
He seems much more comfortable, much more confident.
I mean, like a movie or drama focus shows, if the host had been a movie actor or actress, might have made better sense. But now he's having this music show as a musician, so it works perfectly
for him. That's right. So. And a lot of the pop songs are, at least from this past week, they're a little bit older, and by older I mean they're from the 80s and the 90s.
Right. They're not that old.
From my observation. So he had stories to tell about the songs, because a lot of the artists were artists that he really enjoyed listening to while he was growing up.
Right. And so the time itself is quite good too, I suppose, 9 a.m.
I wonder about that.
Okay.
Actually, I wanted to talk about the time slot because it comes up often that Brian is sometimes directly appealing to his overseas listening audience.
Right.
And I wonder from 9 to 10, with this kind of show, what does the audience in Korea expect? I don't know the answer to that question, but I wonder if people maybe expect more news or more current events. And then we do have shows that cater to that.
Right. Right. I mean, in the afternoon, during the afternoon hours, we have music programs lined up.
That's right.
And for his fans overseas, like especially western part of the world, it's like too late night. too much
That's right.
late night.
That's right.
So this time works for his fans on the other side of the globe in a way, 9 a.m. And then perhaps his fans, I think here in Korea, 9 a.m. is where is the time spot when people kind of settle in their offices and desks and start their working. So always, I think we believe it's better to have a kind of like a light music program rather than heavily information-rich program. So that's what I think we were thinking in introducing the program.
Sense.
Right.
I wonder also if there have been any requests to make Brian's show 2 hours rather than 1 hour.
Ah, right. Maybe what we can try. This is my own total individual view here, but. Considering, having more people listen in, perhaps sometime in the evening hour, we can try that for 2 hours and stuff in the future. But for now, I think he's feeling in this very challenging time. We tried very hard to have a well settled program during that 9 to 10 a.m. spot. And in my own view, I think we finally kind of got it. Would you agree with that?
What was in the slot before? I think it was the
replay and then drive-in, and now
that's right. Replay preceded drive-in.
We've been trying, right? As you can see, so that's what has been happening. Anyway, so additional observations here because our listeners right now will be wondering whether they should really tune in or not here.
Right. So with Brian as the host, as we all know, the host carries the show. Brian seems much more comfortable with the material. But one of the things that I would say is, I wonder how well Brian will be able to bring in new listeners and to cultivate loyal listeners. It's clear that he has a fan base, and he interacts with his fans, which I think is great. Live responses on Twitter, and he even has call-ins with fans, and I think that's really important for the show. But I wonder how well is he going to be able to create new fans.
I see. And you asked the question and try to answer the question.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Right, and the reason is because his personality is very distinct.
Yeah.
He has a lot of enthusiasm, which I think is great. It's great for the morning. But I think there are some aspects that might not be that appealing, actually, to people that aren't already fans.
Meaning?
Well, it seems, especially on the Tuesday show, he has a co-host, Mike Jones.
Right.
And they have a very interesting rapport.
I see.
And this past week, I noticed that sometimes their rapport, their relationship gets a little bit out of control. And what I mean by that is it gets a little obnoxious. There was a segment where they were kind of mocking the artist that they were talking about, which was Chibo Mato, which is an American-based Japanese fan that a lot of listeners are probably familiar with.
Right.
And I felt that it was really inappropriate that they were sort of teasing their names, being Japanese names. And then also joking about their lack of English proficiency. And I think that if that had been reversed, if, for example, someone was doing that about a Korean artist, I don't think people would have allowed that to happen. And I found that to be really inappropriate, I guess.
I see. I mean, the comments on language part, I think, is probably, I would agree with you on that side. But the funny names, interesting names, I wonder, I mean, always, right? You take the side with proper broadcasting and the balance, and I always respect you for having that position. And you know where I stand, right? I always seek more entertainment value, something interesting, something funny, and all that kind of stuff. So, I wonder, during that morning hour, 9 to 10 a.m., when people settle in, try to start working, rather than just calm music. That's what the other Korean radios play, like calm, kind of really toned down music a little bit and all that. Because the majority is going that way, I'm just thinking, why don't we be different? And try to be more...
Spice it up a little in the mornings. Get a little crazy.
Right. Not necessarily talking about the English proficiency, but making fun of some of the interesting names, perhaps. But I know that particular day when they were talking about that, they were walking on the fine borderline, the way I see it. And I think they sort of like got out of it once in a while. So I see your point, and maybe they should pay attention to it. But I'm still on the side of like making the show more interesting during that time. So let's compromise on that.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, on that note, on Fridays, there's an open studio show with Olivia Lim as the co-host.
Right.
And sometimes also the writer Eugene Huang comes into the studio.
Right.
And so you've got 3 people at least in the studio. And there's a lot of very fun energy between them. And I think that works.
Right, that works for Brian Ju because it was too bad for him. And most of the times, of course, he had guests before in the drive-in, but most of the times he was alone. But now, more frequently, he has people in the studio, and that kind of shines his quality.
I agree. I think having that interaction for him really helps him show his personality, and they obviously have a good rapport. And we've talked before about how important that is.
Right. So this lineup of Mike Jones, Eugene Huang, and also Olivia Lim, one of our colleagues here, and that kind of seems to work as a new formula, I suppose. And I understand you brought some audio clips, so maybe should we go over them one by one?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. The first one, should we go first and then listen to your point?
Okay. The first clip has nothing to do with Brian, but I wanted to bring it up because it has something to do with the programming itself, or actually the segues between segments of the show.
Okay, let's listen to it first, and then we'll talk about your point. Here we go. I'm a paparazzi.
Welcome back to What's Poppin', and now it's time for Paparazzi. And today's paparazzi, we're going to talk about a young man.
I have to say that's a little bit heavy on me. That's a little bit too long as an intro clip.
It was 24 seconds long.
And Lady Gaga,
we hear paparazzi so many times, and then when Brian comes in to talk about the paparazzi segment, it just seemed like it was too much.
I mean, I find entertainment value there, but if we can shorten the length by about half, maybe.
I would agree with that. I think that's
a
very minor detail, but I think it's something that it's just too long. The segment itself is fine, but the intro, it's unnecessarily long.
Right. And, of course, Kim Stoker is the expert on perfectionism, and so catching this kind of details really help us in many ways.
Hope so.
I'm sure they'll work on that. I mean, because these are an important part of the art of creating radio shows, and who else will you actually make a point about this kind of things other than you?
Yeah.
So.
One of the things that I talk about a lot is the idea of continuity, or how the flow goes from segment to segment.
Right.
And anytime as a listener, if I'm taken out of that, if I'm removed because something catches my attention or something distracts me, or the mood changes suddenly, I'm going to be less inclined to want to tune in or focused on the show. I think
unlike
with a show
me,
like this,
who's always attracted to something new. Oh, wow.
Oh, a new voice.
We are so different. And it kind of represents our listenership in a way out there. But definitely important preference right there to emphasize as well, of course.
Yeah. So going back to the host himself, and the kind of relationship or rapport that he has with some of the people, I think that he can get a little out of control, and I just want to bring that up. I'm in terms of what does that mean? I think it means there's an element of immaturity at times, which might appeal to his audience, his fans, like you.
Who's looking for something funny and
maybe
interesting.
For someone like me, let's imagine myself at 9:30 in the morning in my office, settling down. I don't know if I want to hear some sort of sophomoric type of humor.
Oh, I see. I mean, I need caffeine all the time. I continue to drink coffee all the time in the morning, so I do need it.
So you like that, right?
Right. So he and the production team themselves will have to keep in mind this diverging preference of the listeners.
I think so.
And try not to go too far too much in one direction, I suppose, right?
And because I don't know exactly who his audience is, or who we're trying to create, who the audience is going to be.
Let's talk about that a little bit, in this regard, because I think it's an important question. For Shane's show, 8 p.m., stuff, and we know it's for young people. And Night 5, for those folks who are more interested in kind of diverse culture and all that kind of stuff, quiet music. I think we have kind of segmentation of the audience or listenership during the evening hours. But in the morning hours, my own view, tell me if you disagree, but my own view is we have to target the general audience. Most of general audience, all kind of mixed bunch.
Right.
Bibimbap audience, in a way.
Right.
So in that sense, I see your point about going too far into one direction or making too entertaining or too funny, because some people may not like it. But the thing is, if you're trying to balance it here and during that particular hour, actually it could lose its own character and color.
That's true. You don't want the show to be too dry. And that's the balance.
Right,
and I think
right.
with Brian, that's why I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be able to bring in new audience members or loyal listeners, because we already know that he has them, and I think that he is appealing to those fans that already exist.
Right.
But the question for me is he going to be able to bring in a new stream of listeners?
I think that's a very important question, and I think he has every chance to do so because not all of us know Brian Ju. Depending on age group,
right.
there will be some solid base for his fandom, but others may not know him, and those listeners like myself who are kind of a little bit tired of this typical morning music program that's played in other Korean radio stations, maybe may want to actually come to this for more fun-filled and more a little bit sometimes outrageous program for that hour.
Yeah, sometimes, maybe not outrageous, but sometimes just a little immature.
Right.
And yes,
That
I guess
would be okay.
that's okay every now and then.
Right. But once again, the production team should keep in mind about this different perspective. Okay, we have other audio clips that you have brought, so I think we should perhaps deal with them a little bit.
Okay, well, we do have a clip, I guess, from what I was discussing earlier with the Chibomato.
Oh, okay, that's coming back here. So now we have the evidence. Let's see.
We have the evidence.
All right, let's talk about that evidence after listening to this.
Okay.
Let's go to it now.
And what's interesting, you're going to hear him in a second. The lead singer, her name's Miho. Eugene's going to kill me because I'm not coming out with this right.
Miho Hattori.
Miho Hattori.
Yes.
And it's interesting because her English is really kind of broken. Like it's not. Usually
Hello,
like.
I am from Japan.
I'm serious, kind of like that. And
I am Miho Hattori. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Exactly, but
Okay.
they still manage to tell brilliant stories, have great lyrics, really quite funny lyrics actually.
It's like K-pop. A lot of the K-pop stars try to sing pop songs in English. And,
Right.
they're not perfect at English,
Right.
but they make the attempt, and they still sound good.
Right, but what I mean is that like this group doesn't attempt to make perfect English. They're like, no, we're celebrating the fact that we don't speak perfect English.
Oh, both of them. Both the girls.
I don't know if the other one speaks English or not.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one, her name is Yuka. She's the musician, I guess the woman behind all the
Yuka
music.
Honda.
Yuka Honda. And I actually looked for this. Is she related to the Honda family? And I couldn't find.
You actually looked that up?
I did. I was like, I couldn't find anything on it. Anyway, Sean Lennon also is interesting.
Okay, now we do have the evidence,
Yes.
and I see your point.
Do you?
But I don't necessarily agree with
Okay.
you on that. Like his mentioning of Honda family, for instance, and the way he's making fun of the Japanese name. You're concerned whether if it had been Americans making fun of Korean names, whether
Yeah.
we would be offended.
Yeah. I think that it was sort of permissible because they're Japanese.
Yeah,
But if we were talking about a Korean band that was based in the United States
Right.
and their English wasn't perfectly grammatically correct and they sang about food, I just don't think that people would have accepted it as much.
I mean, these are artists, right? Like
Yeah.
Brian Ju himself, artist, and this is a basically entertainment show rather than a current affairs show.
Right.
So I don't know. I wouldn't mind American hosts making fun of Psy's name or some Korean artist's name to this degree, but I'm sure there could be different views, and I certainly perfectly respect your view on that. So certainly, call for caution is registered, and that's fully accepted. But
Right. I like that. Call for caution.
there we go. You have the caller for caution every time. But we'll definitely keep in mind. And then again, just to make sum up our points so far, I would like to have a fun show.
Yeah.
For the 9 a.m.
That makes sense.
spot.
That
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
And Brian Ju is a good person to make the show fun.
Right. So as long as they keep in mind this principle and have the sense of direction, they'll continue to go ahead into that direction, I believe. Let's see. Another clip is ready. So should we go into it now?
Yes, and the next clip we're going to listen to is also with Mike Jones.
Okay. All right. Let's go to it.
Welcome back to What's Poppin'. Now it's time for Poppin' Review.
What's up, y'all?
What up, dude?
I know a lot of listeners are probably like, who was that? That was actually me.
This is Wolf Jack. What was that guy's name? Wolf Dog, Jackie, that dude.
In what movie?
Oh, he used to be a radio guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's nice, man.
Thank you very much.
That's all a burp.
That's really me, y'all. Eugene's looking at me all weird.
That's my new
Not
voice.
The only, but that's great.
Could you
Man.
imagine if people said like, hi, Brian, I'm a big fan. Can I have an autograph?
Sure, baby.
And then you get on stage and like the Brian Ju voice comes out. Like, how the hell does that work?
Not to speak in Korean like that. 네, 오랜만입니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 저 브라이언이에요.
This is what happens when you smoke too many cigarettes.
I think this is a better evidence about the possibility of going too far.
Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe,
perhaps.
maybe.
Talking about the voice and making funny voices and stuff. So, So
Brian
let's see.
does a lot of impersonations, and
Yeah.
I think he's really charming when he does it, and sometimes he's obnoxious when he does it. if it's too much.
You know, my call is about 80% of the time, he's funny, in my own view.
Yeah.
And 20% of time, a little bit risque there.
Maybe, or just
Sometimes
taking it too far.
Yeah.
Too far, and when I say that, what I mean is reel it in a little bit. It's becoming a little bit too much like I'm a high school boy.
Uh-huh. That's something new, something different for 9 a.m. You know, I'm telling you, in Korean radios, that's
Really?
not what you get,
You
right?
don't have
9
any
a.m.
DJs
No,
acting
we don't.
like high school boys?
The high school boys is going a little bit too far on our side, remember that. And I think there is that value to it. But definitely what that means is probably we should continue to review this program as time goes by and
Right.
see how it evolves and develops. So, but for now, for our listeners who has not listened to this program, we would encourage them and encourage you, all of the listeners, to
Tune in.
tune in and take a listen. And because this is a different kind of program and different kind of show with a very interesting host and interesting guest, and with this words of caution and call for caution.
Call for caution.
From Kim Stoker, I'm sure the program will only evolve and develop, and we will only make sure of that by revisiting regularly.
Yes, revisiting it sometime in the near future.
Right, we'll keep that in mind. Okay, this has been Kim Stoker for our first segment, Reviewers Speak Out. Thank you big time, and see you soon again.
All right,
Have a great weekend.
thank you too.
All right.